Picture yourself drifting down a misty river in a canoe. Suddenly, you're forced to brace for an imminent collision with an entirely empty wooden boat. When the holes hit, you might feel a flash of annoyance, but you don't fly into a blind rage because there is no target to blame for the impact. Now run the exact same scenario, but put a visible human being steering that oncoming boat. The kinetic, physical impact of the wood striking your canoe is identical. This time, you're furious. The 4th century BCE philosopher Zhuangzi observed that this rage does not stem from the physical collision. It comes from your cognitive assumption that an opposing ego acted with malicious intent. We walk through our modern environments operating under this same procedural flaw. When we hit bureaucratic red tape or deal with a micromanaging boss, we automatically assume the inconvenience is a deliberate, targeted strike against our identity. Treating institutional friction or Bass 8 actors as a personal assault results in constant energetic data leakage. You internalize external chaos as a personal threat, absorbing the full weight of the stressor. This error traps you in the diminished self. You become a powerless, highly reactive lowercase s, crushed by unmanaged external pressures because you allow the chaos of the outside world to override your internal sovereignty. Why are we hardwired to create this illusion of intent? Looking at this anatomical model of the brain, we find the biological root in the left hemisphere, the emissary. The emissary operates using a highly focused mode of attention. It's a processor designed for manipulating the environment into discrete parts. Within this framework runs the default mode network, or DMN. This neural pathway generates self-referential thoughts and strictly categorizes reality into rigid us versus them schemas. During a conflict, the DMN acts as a faulty processor. It takes a neutral event, projects malice onto it, and hardens your ego into a solid, highly defensible target. Baruch Spinoza's concept of strict determinism provides a factual counterweight to this left-brain paranoia. Spinoza argued for blind necessity, the reality that every human action follows strict natural laws. A hostile boss or system is a natural phenomenon, operating exactly like a weather pattern. Taking offense at an incompetent system is as irrational as yelling at a thunderstorm. Recognizing this biological and deterministic reality shifts the problem away from a moral failing and into a matter of neural calibration. To recalibrate, you must override the emissary by actively shifting cognitive processing to the right hemisphere. This is state 0, or the observer state, where you perceive the holistic context rather than fixating on immediate threats. This neurological shift connects to Zhuangzi's 4th century BCE teachings. He advised casting aside the noise of utility and public dispute to travel alone in the country of great silence. This is the mechanic of emptying the boat, applying the Taoist concept of wu wei. When you downregulate the default mode network and drop your self-importance, the rigid ego vanishes. The philosopher Alan Watts translated this into social judo, mapping the physical mechanics of martial arts onto psychological conflicts. The logic relies on yielding to overcome. Instead of meeting an attacker's rigid aggression with equal force, you absorb and redirect their movement, allowing their own momentum to neutralize them. By removing the rigid ego, you execute a strategic maneuver stripping external hostility of its target. Hostility becomes harmless because it has nothing left to collide with. Once the ego is emptied in state 0, the resulting sovereign self maintains its center by partitioning life into 3 manageable domains. This is the 3P equals S protocol. The first domain is your personal vector. This requires a refusal to let external friction dictate your internal biology, keeping your cortisol and adrenaline base level even under pressure. The second domain is the professional vector. Here, you deploy clear, rigid procedural boundaries on the outside, while remaining entirely unattached and empty on the inside. Finally, the private vector uses this systemic detachment to strictly seal your domestic sanctuary from the toxic fallout of professional or public conflicts. When these 3 vectors are secured, the sovereign self emerges. True conflict immunity requires this combination: active boundary management on the outside, paired with absolute non-identification on the inside. Functional self-governance means the kinetic impact of the world simply passes right through you. Check, document, execute. Stay limber, abide, and keep wandering. You can find the Research Vault at journey.czwx.xyz.